My dad, 72 years old, has been with his wife, Helen, 56 years old, for approximately 30 years. She was his affair partner, and due to their actions, we had to move to the other end of the country when I was 7 years old, so my mom could raise me near her parents, sister, and also Dad's family. Dad and Helen moved to the next town over. I, female, 37 years old, have always struggled to get along with Helen. I find her cold, and she was unpleasant to me in a number of ways. A few key incidents from my childhood were things such as her making rude comments about my family on my mom's side, me never having a bedroom at their house despite staying every weekend. I had to sleep in a small room full of her junk. She would ignore me and pretend I wasn't there. She would not let my dad display my school photographs in the house, but there were pictures of her nieces and nephews, etc. She didn't want me there and made that very clear. The final straw for me was when she mocked me at my grandfather's funeral. I was 16 years old and decided I was just done with her. I retained a relationship with my father, and then 2 years later moved away to study. Fast forward to 2011, and we all went away for Dad's 60th birthday. I was 25 years old. I decided to make an effort to build a relationship with her now that I was an adult. I apologized to her for the fact that I hadn't gotten along with her as a child and framed it as, I know I was difficult. Of course, I was a bit difficult. Divorce is traumatic, especially for a 7-year-old. Her response was, "It's fine. I know it was your mom turning you against me." Now, this was an odd take, as my mom always made a huge effort not to badmouth them. Her only negative words against Helen when I was a child were when Helen was nasty to me and I came home upset. I know my mom would have been happy if I got along with Helen, as my happiness is more important to her than her own pride. She's pretty great like that. Anyway, I decided, whatever, let's not make this a thing. I know the truth. So I graciously moved on, and for a while, the relationship seemed better. Not close, too much water under the bridge for that, but cordial. We could be in the same room, even have a conversation, although she refused to come to my 30th birthday meal with my dad and my cousins, which I found odd. In the main, though, this was all easier on my dad, so I welcomed it for his sake. I don't like him being caught in the middle. Now, the crux of the matter. In 2021, I gave birth to my daughter, Alice, who is now 2.5 years old. In the latter stages of my pregnancy, we were still just coming out of lockdown, so big events weren't encouraged, so Mum organized a little baby shower to which she invited my cousin and his wife, Dad's nephew, who I am very close to, and Dad and Helen. Helen declined to come, and Dad even said to me, "Helen wouldn't go to your mum's house," as if she was the injured party in all this mess. Okay, whatever. I can see why she'd be uncomfortable. Move on, accept it. Alice is born. Dad drives over to bring my cousin's wife to see her. No, Helen. This is a repeated pattern. Helen will not meet Alice, and to this day has never seen her in person, but is always sending clothes and toys for her with Dad. This weekend, my partner Alice and I were all unwell with the flu. My mum also has it, so could not come to help out. Dad came instead, for 3 days. On the second day, Alice, in true overtired, unwell toddler mode, threw a full-on tantrum. She pulled my hair, threw a sandwich at her dad, and was generally a gremlin. There's very little to do when a toddler melts down, so we just took her upstairs and she cried it out and fell asleep on my partner's lap. An utterly normal incident in toddler parenting. When I came down, Dad was on the phone to Helen, and I overheard her saying we should have smacked Alice, and she repeatedly said there was no discipline. Alice has discipline. She has a structured day, generally very limited screen time, and punishments will be either natural consequences, you throw the toy goes away, or timeouts for serious things like hitting. I was furious that someone who not only has never met Alice but has repeatedly declined invitations to be in her life was saying this. Helen doesn't know how much or how little discipline Alice has because she isn't involved. By the time the phone call had finished, I was shaking with anger. I said to Dad, I am not having this. She doesn't get to say how I should raise my child when she refuses to even meet her. He started with, it's just her opinion. And I said she isn't entitled to an opinion on a situation she has no involvement in. Here's where I might be the jerk. Dad got very defensive, and I eventually snapped, "She made my childhood unpleasant. I will not have her influencing you against Alice like she tried to influence you against me." Dad got really quiet, looked like he might cry, and said to me, "What do you want me to say?" I fricked up. "I had a great life with your mother and I threw it away. Don't you think I know this?" I tried to point out it wasn't about that. It was about how Helen treated me coldly and how she's treating Alice the same. He wouldn't have it. He just kept saying, "Sorry, I fricked up," and eventually went off for a walk. Later on, when I was putting Alice in the bath, he told my partner he and Helen are basically leading separate lives, and he wonders if it might be easier for them to divorce. My mom also said when she had spoken to him before he came to mine, he seemed very unhappy. I'm wondering if I've inadvertently poked my finger into a gaping wound, metaphorically speaking. I never intended to upset my dad, but he cannot keep ignoring what happened and how he stayed married to someone who was unpleasant and unwelcoming to his daughter and is doing the same to his granddaughter. Mom says I'm right, and it is the elephant in the room, but also not to push it with Dad as Helen has already taken enough from me. I shouldn't give her the satisfaction of falling out with him over her. Am I the idiot for upsetting my father over this? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Your father is a jerk. He let a stranger dictate your childhood. He failed to stand up for you. He failed to make room for you. And now he's failing to see that his pity party is just selfish nonsense and prioritizing his own happiness again. Helen is a jerk, but your father is the one who really deserves your anger. He didn't mess up 30 years ago. He messed up for 30 years. Comment 2. Not the idiot, but OP. At some point you have to realize Helen isn't the only problem here. Your dad is. He let you be treated that way. He cheated on your mom, and he is the one that is doing the same thing to your child. You're letting Helen run your life by refusing to hold your dad accountable and make her the boogeyman. Yes, she's awful, but your dad is just as bad. Now, for the update. It's been about a month since the incident with my dad and the phone call with Helen. Things have been tense, to say the least. Dad has been coming around to see Alice and me, but the visits are shorter and there's this awkwardness that wasn't there before. He's been quiet, more reserved, and it's like he's walking on eggshells around me. I can tell he's struggling with everything that was said, and I feel guilty for causing him pain, but at the same time, I'm still angry about Helen's comments and her general attitude towards my daughter. Since that day, Helen hasn't sent any more clothes or toys for Alice. It's like she's taken a step back after what happened, which is ironic considering she wasn't exactly involved in the first place. Dad hasn't mentioned her much, and when he does, it's brief and without much emotion. It's clear something's going on between them, but he's not opening up about it. My partner has been supportive through all of this, telling me that I did the right thing standing up for Alice and myself. He's been a rock, especially since we've all been recovering from the flu. Alice is back to her usual self, thankfully, and seems oblivious to the adult tensions around her. Mom has been checking in on us too, and she's been a great help, even though she's had her own health to worry about. She's been trying to get me to talk to Dad about everything, to clear the air, but I'm hesitant. I don't want to cause him more distress, but I also can't pretend like everything is okay. I've been thinking a lot about my childhood and how Helen's behavior has been a constant negative thread throughout my life. It's hard not to feel resentful, and I worry about the impact this could have on Alice. I don't want her to grow up feeling the same way I did, unwanted and unimportant to one side of her family. A few days ago, my cousin's wife reached out to me. She's been a great friend and confidant over the years. She told me that she had heard from my cousin that Helen had been complaining to him about the situation. According to her, Helen feels like she's being painted as the villain and that it's unfair because she's tried to be part of our lives. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's like we're living in two different realities. Her version of trying seems to be sending gifts as a substitute for actual, meaningful interaction. I haven't confronted Dad about what my cousin's wife told me. I'm not sure if it would do any good or just make things worse. It's like we're at a stalemate, and I don't know how to move forward. I want to protect my daughter and myself, but I also don't want to lose my dad over this. Just yesterday, I saw Helen in the grocery store. We were in the same aisle, and I could feel her staring at me. I kept my focus on picking out snacks for Alice, trying to ignore her presence. She didn't approach me, and I didn't acknowledge her. It was uncomfortable, and I left the store feeling shaken. It's one thing to deal with family drama in private, but it's another to have this tension spill out into public spaces. I've been talking to my friends about the whole situation, and they're split. Some think I should reach out to Helen and try to have a conversation to see if there's any way to mend fences for the sake of family harmony. Others think I should just focus on my own little family and let whatever happens between Dad and Helen happen. I'm torn. I don't know if reaching out to Helen would help or if it would just be opening myself up to more hurt. And I'm still so angry with her for everything. It's hard to imagine having a civil conversation with someone who has caused so much pain. As for Dad, I love him, but I'm still hurt by his inaction over the years. It feels like he's chosen Helen over me time and time again, and now that I'm a mother myself, I can't understand how he could do that. I want to have a good relationship with him, but it's hard to look past the past. So here we are, a month later, and nothing's really resolved. I'm still angry, Dad's still distant, and Helen's still the same. I wish I could say that things were moving in a positive direction, but they're not. It's like we're all stuck, and I don't know what it's going to take to get us unstuck. I just hope that whatever happens, Alice doesn't get caught in the crossfire. She deserves better than that. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Oh honey, you're not the villain in a telenovela, you're just stuck in a family drama rerun. Your dad's got guilt written all over him, and Helen's colder than a penguin's picnic. You've got a heart of gold trying to patch things up, but sometimes you gotta let go and let them marinate in their own sour sauce. Not the jerk, just a saint with a patience meter running on empty. Comment 2. Navigating family drama is tougher than solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. It's clear you've tried extending an olive branch to Helen, but it takes two to tango. Maybe consider family therapy with your dad to address the underlying issues. It could help clear the air without the emotional baggage check-in. You're not the jerk for wanting a peaceful family life. Just remember to protect your peace first. Now, for the next story. I, 38-year-old female, have been married to my husband, 43-year-old male, for almost 15 years. My father-in-law has never really accepted me as family. He referred to me as my son's wife for the first 5 years of my marriage, and when he convinced us to go halves on a property, he insisted on only his and my husband's names on a survivor's deed in case we divorced. In the last few years, he has struggled financially due mostly to poor choices he made. His wife, my husband's stepmom, is much older and has medical problems, leading him to choose to work mostly from home. He has traded in vehicles numerous times in the last few years, supposedly trying to lower his payments, but it never works, and he is always upside down on the loans. He is paying close to $1,000 a month on a minivan. Now here is my problem. My father-in-law is currently trying to guilt-trip my husband into giving him one of several vehicles I inherited. I had 2 uncles pass away 3 weeks apart during the holidays more than a year ago, and I am still going through the probate process because they passed so close together. I do not have the court's permission to do anything with their vehicles yet. He told my husband how much it would help him to have one of the vehicles so that he could let his car go back on repo and not have to make the payments. I may have considered it too if he had waited more than a couple of weeks after both my uncles passed away. I was literally knee-deep in a hoarder's paradise, trying to clean out their apartment within the month to avoid having to pay rent because I couldn't afford it and had no access to their money. Strike 1. He picked out which vehicle he wanted, the most valuable of the 4, rather than asking if we had plans for them yet. Strike 2. Then he asked my husband to give him said vehicle. Strike 3. As a cherry on top, he asked my husband again, still has never asked me, to give him a $10,000 vehicle after we pay for all the little repairs it needs, of course. Here is where I might be the jerk. Do I need the vehicle? No. Could I use the money from its sale? Yes, but I could live without it too, as our finances are better now. Will I sign it over to him? Never. This is far from the first time that man has shown utter disrespect for me, and he can pay for rides before I give him any vehicle. Yes, I am probably being a little childish. The only reason I hesitate is that I actually like his wife, and it would help her to some extent. Edit to add, My husband has already told me that the vehicles are mine, and I can do whatever I want with them. Since it's been mentioned a few times, he has been bought out of the property and my name added. Edit for clarity and to address the most common responses. My husband acts as a buffer against father-in-law for the sake of my sanity. He has told father-in-law multiple times that the vehicles are not his to do anything with, but the man is intentionally dense. His wife cannot legally own a car as it cannot be registered in her name, no license. I will not rent him a vehicle as I can't trust that he will maintain it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My mom and sister died within 2 months of each other. I inherited 3 cars and 2 houses. I feel your pain. Beggars came out of the woodwork. It was an emotional time. Comment 2. Make him come to you. Seriously. If he wants something from you, he needs to ask you respectfully, and after he apologizes for disrespecting you. Now, for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. They really helped me sort through my feelings and figure out what to do next. So, a lot has happened since I last shared about the situation with my father-in-law and the inherited vehicles. First off, my husband has been amazing throughout this whole ordeal. He's been my rock, constantly reminding his dad that the cars are mine to deal with and that they're not up for grabs. Despite this, my father-in-law has been relentless. He's tried every trick in the book to get his hands on one of the vehicles, even going as far as to drop by unannounced, hoping to catch me in a good mood or something. His latest tactic was to play the sympathy card. He started telling everyone how he's struggling to make ends meet and how having one of the cars would be a lifesaver. I get that he's in a tough spot, but it's hard to feel sorry for someone who's trying to take advantage of your loss. Plus, it's not like he's made any effort to change his financial situation. He's just looking for an easy out. Meanwhile, I've been dealing with the probate process, which is finally moving along. I've been able to sell some of my uncle's belongings, which has helped with the costs. The cars are still tied up in legalities, but it's looking like I might get the court's permission to do something with them soon. In the midst of all this, my husband's stepmom has been in and out of the hospital. I really do feel for her, and I've been trying to support her as much as I can. She's always been kind to me, unlike my father-in-law. It's put me in a tough spot because I know that giving them a car would help her out a lot, but I just can't bring myself to reward my father-in-law's behavior. The other day, something strange happened. My father-in-law stopped by, and for the first time he actually tried to speak to me directly about the cars. It was awkward, to say the least. He was fumbling over his words, trying to be charming, and it was so obvious that he was putting on an act. I just listened, nodded, and told him I'd think about it, which I have no intention of doing. But here's where things get really weird. A neighbor mentioned seeing someone poking around the cars late at night. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed that one of the cars had been tampered with. Nothing was stolen, and there wasn't any damage, but it's got me on edge. I can't help but wonder if my father-in-law is getting desperate enough to do something stupid. On top of that, I've been getting calls from a number I don't recognize. They never leave a message, and when I tried calling back, it just rings and rings. I have no idea who it is or what they want, but the timing is suspicious. And then there's my husband. He's been more stressed than usual, and I can tell that this whole situation is weighing on him. He's caught between wanting to support me and feeling guilty about his dad. We've had a few tough conversations about what to do, and while he agrees that his dad's behavior is unacceptable, I can tell he's torn. So that's where things stand right now. I'm still waiting on the probate court. My father-in-law is still trying to get his hands on a car, and there are some mysterious goings-on that I can't quite figure out. It's all a bit much, but I'm trying to stay strong and do what's best for me and my family. I'll keep you all posted on how things develop. Now, for the comments. Comment 1. Honey, I'd say you're more of a saint than an AH for not turning that car into a fill-seeking missile. You're navigating a legal minefield in a family circus. Stand your ground, and maybe offer father-in-law a toy car to play with until probate clears up. Comment 2. You're in a tough spot, but remember, probate law is your shield. Maybe suggest father-in-law looks into temporary transportation options like car rentals or public transit. It's not about being petty, it's about protecting your assets and respecting the legal process. Stay strong. Now, for the next story. My 56-year-old daughter, Sophia, 24 years old, lives in a gated mansion, all the while knowing I am on the verge of being homeless. And if not homeless, then living in an inherently unsafe multiple roommate situation in Los Angeles. I have been facing financial difficulties for the past 5 years, and I just thought that if anybody would understand, it would be my daughter, because of all the uncertainties we face together due to her dad. Her dad, David, and I got together when I was 29 and he was 33. He was already very successful in real estate. I had been married prior with a then 6-year-old son, and my ex-husband so hated the fact that David was well off that he alienated my son against me. My son and I are on comfortable terms. He treats me more like a friend than a mom. Meanwhile, my daughter and I are closer, and she has a husband of 2 years who is very well off, and while he prefers handling business matters on his own, with regards to family matters, he mostly does what she says, especially after their 2-year-old boy was born. David was perfectly okay with dating me and my post-baby number 1 body, but after I gave birth to Sophia, he visibly lost interest in me. He reneged his proposal, my modeling career was struggling, and David cheated on me with women I felt most insecure next to. This went on for 6 years until he left. Paid child support, but other than that, iced us out. I have tried to move on, but after the events of 2020 and how it affected the investments I put my savings into, I can't afford the rent increase from my apartment building. I tried to negotiate, but the manager said this was a fully staffed, access-controlled building in an upper-middle-class area and that I was getting a deal compared to what the company could get for it. I've been apartment hunting since and staying in a co-living situation. It is awful. Everybody there is under 35, and I feel they don't respect me as someone older as they should. A lot of clashing personalities makes this an unsafe situation. After a lot of rejections, I talked to a building manager who agreed to consider me if my daughter, one half of a financial powerhouse, co-signed, so I asked her to do so. Forwarded a bunch of emails. Instead of a constructive conversation, she kept saying, "So I am paying the rent. I have to ask my husband." I told her I was paying the rent as I started a luxury sales job. She then said this isn't her money, it's her husband's, so she can't make this commitment. I was so distraught and now have to spend my holidays in this dump or my car. Somebody else got the apartment I wanted. Meanwhile, my daughter comes asking if I wanted to visit and see my grandson. I was insulted that she'd essentially flaunt her and her son's life of luxury in front of me, knowing I'm basically homeless. I told her just that, and she said that wasn't her intention, and to not be petty. I told her I could not bear to be around her anytime soon, especially during Christmas. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're the idiot. Your daughter doesn't owe you anything. Those younger roommates you speak of? Respect is earned, not owed to you or anyone else. Move somewhere, probably out of Los Angeles you can afford. Comment 2. Sounds like there's a reason that Sophia declined and isn't all that worried about you not seeing her kid. But yeah, you sound like a self-absorbed jerk. You're the idiot. Now, for the update. After the confrontation with Sophia about not co-signing the lease, things went from bad to worse. I was already struggling with the living situation, but the tension between my daughter and me added another layer of stress. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, and it was eating me up inside. I continued to search for a new place to live, but the market in Los Angeles is brutal. Every decent place I found was either too expensive or required a co-signer, which I obviously didn't have. The co-living situation was becoming unbearable. The younger roommates were constantly throwing parties, and I felt more like an unwanted guest than a resident. I tried to keep to myself, but the noise and lack of respect for my space made it difficult to even sleep at night. Meanwhile, my job in luxury sales was not going as well as I had hoped. The commission was good when I made a sale, but those were few and far between. I was starting to worry about how I would make ends meet if things didn't pick up soon. In the midst of all this, my son reached out to me. He had heard about my situation from Sophia and offered to help in any way he could. It was a small comfort, but I appreciated his gesture. We met for coffee, and he listened as I vented about everything that was going on. He didn't have the means to support me financially, but he did offer his couch if things got too bad at the co-living space. It wasn't an ideal solution, but it was something. Sophia, on the other hand, had been silent since our argument. I couldn't help but feel hurt by her lack of concern. It was as if she had washed her hands of me. I tried to focus on work and finding a new place to live, but the situation with my daughter was always in the back of my mind. Then, out of the blue, I received a call from a private number. It was a lawyer, representing someone who wished to remain anonymous. They told me that this anonymous benefactor had learned of my situation and wanted to help. They had paid 6 months of rent for a small but comfortable apartment in a safe area, and all I had to do was move in. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. Who could possibly be doing this for me? I moved into the apartment a few days later. It was modest, but it was clean and quiet, a stark contrast to the co-living space. I finally had a place to call my own, at least for the next 6 months. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, I had hope. I was curious about the identity of my benefactor, but the lawyer had been clear that they wished to remain anonymous. I respected their wishes, but I couldn't help but wonder who had been so generous. I had a few theories, but no concrete evidence to support any of them. As I settled into my new home, I received a text from Sophia. She wanted to meet and talk. I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a park, keeping a safe distance from each other. She looked tired, and I could tell something was on her mind. We talked awkwardly at first, tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. Eventually, she broke down and apologized for not helping me when I needed it. She explained that she and her husband were having financial troubles of their own, something she had been too ashamed to admit. Their lifestyle had been a facade, propped up by credit and loans. They were on the brink of losing everything. I was shocked. Sophia, who had always seemed so in control, was facing a crisis I knew all too well. I didn't know what to say. We sat in silence for a while, both of us lost in our thoughts. As we were about to part ways, Sophia's phone rang. She answered, and her face went pale. She hung up and turned to me, her eyes wide with fear. "The bank," she whispered. "They're investigating us for fraud." I stood there, stunned. The revelation raised more questions than it answered. Had Sophia's financial troubles led to illegal activities? Was this why she couldn't help me? And most importantly, who had paid for my apartment? The pieces didn't fit together, and I was left with a sinking feeling that there was more to this story than I knew. Now, for the comments. Comment 1. Hey, I get that you're in a tough spot, but maybe try reaching out to local community services for assistance with housing. They often have resources for people in your situation. It's tough, but sometimes family can't or won't help, and it's important to explore all your options. Comment 2. I had a similar fallout with my kid over money. It took time, but we eventually repaired our relationship. Money can create a huge rift, but communication and understanding each other's boundaries are key. Hang in there, and maybe with time, Sophia will come around. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.